Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Erin Velarde, the founder of Vote Run Lead, and we are here to release a fantastic new tool, a data visualization on the number and representation of women and women of color in our state legislatures in all 50 states. Vote Run Lead trains women to run for office and win. Our latest initiative, Run 51, is set out to make America's state houses 51% women. 51% women's representation in our Senates and in our houses. We know how critical the state legislature is, whether it's voting rights, access to abortion and our bodily autonomy, or our roads and bridges. Our state legislatures are becoming the most vital office of our time. And it's only going to get more important that we know who is in our legislatures and if we truly have reflective democracies in all 50 states. So with the help of Graphicacy, Vote Run Lead built State of My Democracy. We've also got support from Pivotal Ventures, a Melinda French Gates company that allows us to go deep in all 50 states and see the status of women and women of color in our state houses and senates. So let me walk you through this. The tool, stateofmydemocracy.org, is up and live now and available to you. And we took a look not just at women in our state houses, but we actually broke it out according to different racial and ethnic identity groups, as well as overall women of color. Now, you can see it how white women are well represented. You can actually see the most staggering statistic here, how well represented men are in our state houses and overly represented in our state senates. Truly not a reflective democracy. Here you have a chart view across all 50 states, which provides the representation of women. Let's take a look at Latinas in our state senates. These numbers are really sobering. The gaps are huge, reflective of the populations. Take a look at New Mexico. 1 in 10 women are state senators who are Latina, but 1 in 4 women in New Mexico are Latina, not a reflective democracy. There are over 30 states that do not have Latinas in their state senate. As we go across different identity groups, we look at Black women in our state senates. 20 states do not have any Black women in their state senate. The only state that gets close to parity here is Georgia. 18.2% of the population are Black women. About 18%, just shy, of Black women are state senators. Now, you can take a look at this through a map to find your state. You can share some of these sobering statistics, right? Or we can dig into each of our own states. So here we have a national overview in our chart view that really shows some of the disparities. I do want to also take a look at women of color overall. The size of the gap, Texas, and we have Representative Mary Gonzalez here with us who can talk a little bit about that. Women of color are only 6.5% of state senators. They're almost a third of the state's population. Doing better, and let me find Texas, doing a little bit better in our house, in the state house, 30% of the population, but not even 20% of our state representatives. So we're going to have Mary Gonzalez talk to us about how critical that is in places like Texas. Now, overwhelmingly, we found that it was the state Senate where women of color were not represented in extremely sobering numbers. And we're ready to do something about it at Vote Run Lead. And we have 2 women, one a current state senator, Faith Winter from Colorado, and Leah Webb, who is running for the state Senate in New York. So let's pick a state. Let's stick with New Mexico. Vote Run Lead and Graphicacy built this tool where each of us can dig deep into the state that we live in, right? How reflective is the legislature of women of color? How reflective of the legislature of Black women? This meter tells us how close we are to a reflective democracy. And why is a reflective democracy critical? Because we know that when women are represented, we pass more bills, we bring more money home to our districts, we engage more with our constituents. Government is run better when women are at the table. So part of what really makes this tool special is we actually took a look at some of those key policy issues. We pulled in data from really fantastic partners. So what does the policy landscape look like in New Mexico, where we see that there are only, let's give an average women here, right? So New Mexico looks good in our state house, but a long way to go in our state Senate, right? What happens to some of the legislation? New Mexico rates C, according to the Giffords Law Center in gun safety. It's not protected in New Mexico, our right to abortion access. New Mexico does not request a voter ID, right? So we have a bit of a mixed bag about some of the key issues that are critical to women today. So what is Vote Run Lead doing about it? We're making sure that you know why. So one of the things when we were looking at this data was, even when we see a strong number of women represented, we weren't in the disconnect between some of the policy issues. We wanted to know why. And one of the key things that came out from our cohort of state representatives here was that it matters if women are in leadership, right? And so we have a state in the New Mexico legislature where there are no women in the state Senate leadership, even though the population is there, and there are no women in the state House leadership. Salary, 0, right? Even though party control here is both Democrats, you actually don't see women in the legislature. And we're going to have Senator Faith Winter talk to us about, even, sometimes we make these assumptions about, oh, if there are more Democrats in the House, then there must be more women in the House. These things are not one-to-one. That's why it's critical that we have unique initiatives for women and women of color to run for the legislature, like Run 51 at Vote Run Lead. And of course, it wouldn't be Vote Run Lead if we didn't actually connect you to a resource to run for public office, which is what we do best. So you can join women across the country through your nomination self, or you can nominate someone that you know, and Vote Run Lead will provide them with a toolkit on how to run for office that was built by and for state legislators, excuse me. Right. All right, let's take a look at Texas before we shift over to our conversation with Representative Mary Gonzalez, candidate Leah Webb, and State Senator Faith Winter. All right, so Mary, I'm going to bring you in. Texas legislature, low salary, no women in leadership, Senate in the House, not reflective of the population. I know you identify as Latina. We saw some of these numbers, still not reflective of the population, not even close. And I'd love to hear from you, Representative Gonzalez, about why does it matter, right? We want a reflective democracy for all the right reasons, but at the end of the day, what are you able to do? What kind of impact are you able to have because your voice is in the House?
Thanks, Erin. So it's not rocket science. We know that a lot of public policy is made or derived out of people's lives and experiences. I remember one time we were on the floor and there was a bill about food stamps. And I grew up in a family, a low-income family, where we survived for a period of time on food stamps. And one of my colleagues is like, we just need to get rid of them. And I'm just like, he's like, nobody even uses them. And I was like, what are you? And even though he knew the numbers, and even though he had maybe even heard the testimony, sometimes the absence of the lived experience creates a gap that even with the data, they can't see through those numbers. Yeah. So it's really critical to humanize the realities of people, specifically women of color. And so this data is invaluable to people understanding what the experience is for women of color. And I would add also, as an LGBTQ woman, women from different intersectional backgrounds in the legislative space.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mary. And one of the biggest barriers we see, polls we've done in the past where women look at this salary and say, how can I possibly afford to be in the legislature at this salary? So at $7,200, how are you making it work?
Well, that question is really one of the largest barriers to when we think about diversity in places of power. When I first got in, I'll be honest, I never thought I was going to win. So I kind of jumped into the office, jumped in the race, and didn't think I was going to win. I was like, oh no, how do I live? And I lived in a barn for a few years until I could figure out how to make it work. But I always thought, what if I had kids? But I've never even thought about jumping in as a lark, right? But all of us in the legislature who are women have other full-time jobs. So we're doing full-time jobs, taking care of our families, and trying to be a state legislator. Really, when we think about structural barriers to representation, the pay is one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have a mom of two, Senator Faith Winter from Colorado, a state where people often look to you in Colorado because of the percentage of women that we see. You're overall, I think you're in the high 40%. Let's look at women overall. Oh my God, I love this tool. Look how beautiful that is. That beautiful change. Graphics team is amazing. So we're looking at the House, where you also did serve for several terms, Faith. And now you're in the Senate. 34% of the state senators are women, but you are just shy of 50% of the population in Colorado. We see some of the impacts. We know that you have a B in gun safety. A lot of strong abortion access laws were just passed. You do still require an ID to vote. Some of the, again, the top issues that we care about and that folks care about at the state legislative level, some of our key alumni as well in Colorado. But tell us, Faith, you have women in leadership, not in the state Senate where you are. It's a much better salary, but still probably not a living wage, given the fact that you're working 20 hours a day, even in the off season. What has been the impact of more women in the Colorado legislature? And what would happen if both your House and Senate were overwhelmingly women?
Yeah, having women has changed the dialogue within the House and the Senate. So we are one of the only states that have actually codified the right and the access to abortion care. And that happened because of women legislators. And to be completely honest, we had some male colleagues that were really uncomfortable with us bringing that forward this year. We brought this forward before the Dobbs decision, and so we didn't have a full understanding of the impact it would have. And now we have women from Texas, from Utah, from Wyoming, from all over the country coming to Colorado to receive the access to healthcare that they deserve. And the reason we actually got that passed and brought forward was because of women's leadership.
Nice.
Another example is, I think one of the untold stories of the pandemic is the spike in domestic violence. And we know that women are more likely to be the victims and the survivors of domestic violence. And when we were allocating our money that we were receiving from the federal government, it was the women in the legislature that fought tooth and nail to make sure that we were allocating money to solve the domestic violence issues, because we had all our domestic violence shelters overrun. And so Colorado is a beacon for what happens, but we still are behind in leadership. Still, most of the positions are men. Unfortunately, in the Senate, we are going to go down in the number of women elected this year, even though I think we'll hold it in a Democratic control. And I think most of our leadership is going to remain male. And that means that we're again working really hard to elevate the voices of women and BIPOC women and GLBTQ women as well, and making sure that those voices are at the table and in the policy making rooms.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think one of the glaring things that we learned as we, see this in a, beautiful grid view, as we look nationally, is the lack of women in our state senates, right? Lack of women in the leadership in our state senates. So, Leah, I want to turn to you. You're a candidate for the state senate in New York. You're in a very heated district right now. And actually headed to a debate in just a few minutes. And so thank you so much for being with us today. As we look at Black women in our state senates, it is not good. This is the, 20 states in the country. Why the state senate for you? What made that the position where, we know that every year, I think every election year, every election cycle, I think as a country to sort of count on the energy and enthusiasm of Black women in our elections, but don't then see that reflected, right? Both for population and across all these states in the critical seats like our state house, like our state senates. So here we are in New York. Tell us why you decided to run for the Senate.
Thank you, Erin. And I just want to echo what I've heard my other panelists share. There's a lot of barriers to running for office overall, especially for women and women of color, for all the reasons that my panelists shared. And for me, when you look at policy, what motivated me to run for state senate is that there's a growing disconnect between elected leadership in the policies that they are passing and their connection to working families on the issues that are impacting their everyday lives, whether you look at jobs, healthcare, childcare, the environment. And so there's a major disconnect, and it's showing up in policies, regressive policies, and on the heels of a devastating pandemic, which further exacerbated these disparities. We need leadership that understands in real time what struggles our working families are dealing with, but more importantly, are willing to advance inclusive and equitable policies that change the trajectory for our entire community.
That's right. That's right. And I think so much of that happens in the state Senate. We have women in leadership, Black women in leadership in the state Senate in New York. And I think being a New Yorker myself, I know we're seeing the significant number of bills turn out of the legislature and signed into law since her leadership. Because, you know, at the end of the day, we know that it is leadership who actually figures out what ideas can actually get to the floor, get out of committee, get seen, and get legislated. I want to thank both Carney Clears and Rebecca Lamb for also joining us today. I don't know, Carney or Rebecca, if you want to add anything about where the data came from and, you know, what some of the, how we pulled in some of the other resources as well. I think that might be helpful for folks to talk just a little bit about some of our data sets. And thank you, Leah.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that. So, yeah, we always enjoy building these sorts of data explorer tools to take data that might already be publicly available and make it tangible and make it explorable for people that might not have the technical skills to get into some raw spreadsheets. But a lot of this data, luckily, we're leveraging really great work that's being done by other organizations to collect some of this information. So some of the main data that we're seeing on the overview nationally, the how reflective is this legislature data, a lot of it's collected by Center for American Women in Politics. I believe they're out of Rutgers.
That's right.
And then just some of the information about the specific legislatures, the pay, et cetera, is coming from Ballotpedia. And each of the different policy landscape items, there's a supporting data set for each one of those. So Giffords Law Center is providing the data for gun safety ratings, Center for Reproductive Rights on Abortion Access, and the Voting Rights Lab is providing the data for any laws around requesting an ID. But again, all that was already publicly available data that great organizations are doing the hard work of collecting. This is a way to kind of bring it all into one place to get this more holistic view of what the landscape across the different state houses are. So it's a little bit more powerful than just having to go between different spreadsheets.
Thank you, Carney. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And we worked with an amazing team over, as I said, over at Graphicacy to pull this together. And this is actually Vote Run Lead's second data visualization tool. Last year, when we launched Run 51, aiming to get women to run for the legislature, we actually built a tool that you could see how long it would take for your legislature to reach 51%. And in some places we were, 2 decades away. In other places we were 314 years away from 51%, and that was West Virginia. So I want to thank the Graphicacy team for both of these data sets. I also want to thank Pivotal Ventures and Melinda French Gates Company for support of the data visualization tool that allowed us to really build this beautiful story that needs to be told. Now that we have the baseline for where we are at, we can only go up. This is about women voters, both male and women, all voters, knowing the representation of their legislature, knowing the dynamic makeup of their legislature, knowing who is representing and who is not representing you. This is also for women and femmes and anyone identifying with an urge to run for the legislature, to see folks who look like you and to see where your community is represented and why you need to run. Vote Run Lead has 177 women across 33 states running for the state Senate right now. And we are thrilled for that community to help change the makeup of America's legislatures. So I want to pause now as we are only going to 11:30 and see if there are any questions or any further comments from Representative Gonzalez, State Senator Faith Winter, or candidate Leah Webb. Actually, right. No worries. This tool is self-explanatory. This tool is the sobering reality of the status of women and women of color in our state houses across America, and Vote Run Lead is ready to do something about it. We have the resources and tools for you to run for the legislature and the support and community of women like those who are joining us today. So I will give, for a last moment, our three speakers the final word, and we'll start with you, Leah.
Again, thank you so much, Erin, for the invitation. And, you know, in looking at this data, it just further, for me, fortifies why Vote Run Lead exists and why we need to continue fighting for gender parity in our in an elected office. Most certainly, you know, some folks may, you know, feel like, okay, well, more diverse representation, what does that mean? And my answer is everything, you know, for all the reasons that you shared and more. And so I just feel that we're at a crossroads as a country, as a world, and we really have to ensure that our voices are heard in the state houses, city halls, congressional halls, you name it, for the environment of our communities. So I really hope and encourage folks to look at this tool as a guide to help drive the good work that we're all doing. And thanks again for all the work that you're doing, Erin, and the whole team at Vote Run Lead, and all of my panelists as well, who I have a lot of respect for. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Good luck at the debate. All right. Representative Gonzalez.
No, definitely. So there was a question in the chat that said, what do the candidates find helpful about this site? And I think that's really an important question because, you know, when you're deciding to run for office, there's so many unknowns. You have no idea the environment, the culture, how you're going to survive. And I think this tool kind of gives you a glimpse of what you might be walking into. And it's not to say that, oh, let's look at West Virginia. Oh, there's not a lot of women, I'm not going to run. I think it's just being more, having clearer eyes about the situation in which you're getting into, so then you can be better prepared, so you can be A, more effective, and B, stay longer in that office, as opposed to getting in and not having the information and not knowing what's going on. This tool is really critical to giving women the information needed to make the important decisions about running for office. And so I just want to say, there's always a story behind the data. So I look at the data and you could say Texas, oh, we're very underrepresented, and I've been in the legislature for 10 years. A, I wish this tool existed when I came into office. I think it would have helped me be better prepared. But B, what I encourage people who look at this is look up the women then. After you see these numbers, what are their stories? What are they working on? How can we support them?
That's right. And where we do have Vote Run Lead alumni, I think it's in more than half of the state legislatures. We are populating with these amazing stories where you can learn more about the women legislators in your community. Of course, we have you profiled, Mary, for Texas. Thank you so much for being with us today. All right, will you close us out, State Senator Winter?
Excellent. I just appreciate this tool so much because it highlights how much work we have to do. And we know that our democracy works best when we actually have a representative democracy, because when we have diverse views at the table, we're going to solve problems in a more holistic, smarter way.
That's
and we know that our states and our country and our cities right now need solutions. We're hungry for solutions. There's a lot of problems out there. People have a lot of stress and pain. And the only way we're going to solve those in a way that reflects a lived experience is bringing those people into positions of power. And that's the work that Vote Run Lead is doing every single day, is bringing people with those lived experiences to make sure we have a representative democracy. And that's how we solve problems. And that's exactly what our country needs right now.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of our panelists. This tool, stateofmydemocracy.org, is where you can find it. It'll be all over social media starting this afternoon. And please play around on the tool. The goal is to have you see these sobering statistics, and some of them where we're doing well, but to click through on your state, get the landscape of where you live. You can only run where you live. So stateofmydemocracy.org, voterunlead.org. Thank you to our team at Graphicacy for putting this together, for our alumni community who are sitting in legislatures, for the 177 women who are running right now, and of course from the support make this possible, Pivotal Ventures and Melinda French Gates Company. Thank you for being with us today. Have a great one.